Before you listen to the Tech Talk Daily podcast, I have to ask, are the high levels of uncertainty you're experiencing keeping you from making bold moves? Are you able to clearly see and act on the game-changing opportunities the pandemic has created? I'm Daniel Burris, serial entrepreneur, global technology futurist, and disruptive innovation expert, and right now, you have a choice to make. You can react to problems and disruptions after they happen, or you can learn to accurately anticipate disruptions before they disrupt and identify and pre-solve problems before they happen, giving you the ability to turn disruptive change into your biggest advantage. If you want to take control of your future and make a significant impact now and in the years ahead, join thousands of leaders from around the world by becoming a member of my Anticipatory Leader System, where you'll get the latest insights, processes, tools, and virtual coaching that will give you the certainty and confidence you need to actively shape a better future for you and your organization. Go to techblogwriter.co.uk and click on Daniel Burris.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, it wasn't too long ago that everyone declared crypto winter was over, but then a global pandemic hit. You couldn't make this up, could you? And everyone felt quite downbeat in the industry. But then I did notice a big change in the air, especially recently. I mean, PayPal have struck a deal up with cryptocurrencies, and I've started to see a few statements from businesses and even banks that are starting to make noises about the need for digital payments. And here in October 2020, as I record this podcast today, Telos is a high-capacity network and one of the most active blockchain platforms in the world. Not my words, not Telos's words. That's according to Blocktivity. And Telos features a robust third-generation blockchain governance system, including advanced voting features and smart contracts that can be fully configured to meet the needs of any developer. And again, this feels quite timely with all the discussions around the election in the US right now and how little that voting process has changed in the last 100 years. And ultimately, Telos is created by developers for developers, and Telos extends its state-of-the-art blockchain and governance features to all decentralized apps on its platform, aiming to deliver the best user experience in the marketplace. So Douglas Horne is the Whitepaper author and chief architect of the Telos public blockchain, and also has an intriguing backstory too, but no spoilers from me. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way stateside so we can speak with Douglas about all things Telos and a few other things too. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. My name is Douglas Horne. I am the chief architect of the Telos blockchain. And what that means is that I work with a great team of people building the most advanced blockchain in many ways in the world. And I tend to lead on what the new features are likely to be and at least proposing those things because it's a governance-based system. And so I come up with the ideas and figure out how to implement them and to keep Telos at the cutting edge of the important features of blockchain today.
Excellent. And one of the things that I love doing on this Daily Tech podcast is the fact that I'm always fascinated by the human story behind any career in tech. So before you came on, I did a little bit of research and I quickly learned that you have written and directed award-winning feature films and designed and produced mass market games for the likes of Disney, Pokemon, Warner Brothers, and so many other brands. But can you expand on that and tell me how all that led to you and what you're doing at Telos now?
Yeah, it is a sort of a circuitous career path, I suppose. But there's really no one career path that prepares somebody for blockchain, which is bringing together a number of different disciplines, from development to economics to marketing to just being a futurist in a way. So my background, many years ago, I was a developer, and wrote about developing, contributed to programming books, and wrote for computer magazines, monthly mailed computer magazines, if you can imagine such a thing ever existing. I transitioned. I had a very fortunate opportunity to transition into the Hollywood industry, or the independent film industry, for after selling a script and being hired to write some things. It was fascinating. That developed over about 15 years into as working as a creative for different companies, to getting over that time a few feature films made, writing several others, working as a producer on a few TV projects. And all of these, by the way, we're talking at the fringes of the industry. Never a major career, always at the edges. But I was working as a creative in several areas, and that led to a chance to work for game development. If you're a creative person who knows how to come up with out of the box ideas and then develop them into an actual project, moving that from film to games is less of a change than you might think. I had a chance to work for one of the leading game invention studios in America, and just it came as a recommendation from a friend of a friend, and that turned into a great 3 years of inventing and designing games for major brands. But I always loved tech, and I always missed it, and I was early in the blockchain, or reasonably early in the blockchain world. I became very fascinated with it. I kept moving forward with that, and I had also been doing between big sort of film projects. I was doing marketing videos in Seattle, where I live, for Amazon and Microsoft and Boeing and a lot of big technology companies there. And it just sort of drove me back into my love of technology and my desire to have an impact. And so at a certain point, I had been working on the launch of the EOS blockchain. And I had some disappointments about how that had actually materialized compared to the initial idea of the EOS Whitepaper. And a lot of things didn't get built, and I thought they were important. And so I said, hey, what would it look like if we actually built these things? That's that out of the box kind of thinking. Like, let's forget about the idea that there's only one way to do EOS, and let's see if there's another way to build it that lives up more to what I had been hoping when I read the EOS Whitepaper and got excited about it. And so a number of other people were able to, said, hey, that's actually bothering me too. That's a good idea. Let's get involved. And we were able to pull together about 130 people around the world to launch Telos, with never raising the ICO and as a pure grassroots project. So at that point, I couldn't leave.
And I suspect there'll be a lot of people listening that will share that sadness and dismay at what happened with the EOS project. And in fact, that's a whole other podcast interview on its own. But
indeed,
here in 2020, though, according to Blocktivity, Telos is a high-capacity network and one of the most active blockchain platforms in the world. But we will have people listening to this podcast today. Some will be from the crypto and blockchain community and tech community, and others that are hearing about you guys for the first time. So can you set the scene and get everyone on the same page about the kind of problems that you set out to solve for businesses with Telos?
Yeah, absolutely. And there, like you mentioned, there is a disconnect from looking at Blocktivity or any other independent measurement site of activity on blockchains, and seeing that EOS and Telos are far ahead of all other competitors, in terms of actual transactions being done on the blockchain, far ahead of like Ethereum or anything along those lines. And the fact that maybe they only, even though Telos launched its mainnet almost 2 years ago, and has printed about 120 million blocks so far, which is a lot, that they may not have really heard about it or not started hearing about it until fairly recently. And there is a disconnect there, and part of that comes from the fact that we never actually raised any money, and so we never had the big spending budgets, and we never did the ICO, which is one of the sort of profile raising experiences. We kind of launched this Satoshi style, but doing that in 2018 is very different than doing that in 2009 or 10. So what we were trying to solve was that there is a real need for a transparent, immutable ledger that's affordable for people and companies to use, that doesn't have any transaction fees, so it can address on one end of a spectrum very high transaction networks, such as IoT devices that are doing a lot of micropayments and recording data. And then on the other side of the spectrum, companies that need to use all these governance features that have no one else has built as strong or robust as we built on Telos with the Telos Decide governance engine. And so these voting features can purely be picked up very easily by any app on the network. So there's the spectrum between high capacity on one end, needing voting on the other end, and then more traditional businesses sort of in the middle that need to have a blockchain that really works for them, is quick, is high resolution, meaning, you could have a new block every half second as opposed to every, 12 seconds or on some unpredictable amount of time. And so there was a real technical need for these, for the speed, capacity, low operational cost, and governance features that just didn't exist anywhere. And so we were trying to serve those markets, knowing that the markets we identified today are only a small fraction of what was actually going to be needing these in the future. So we tried to look at the needs that were out there, and not necessarily the immediate users. Although we do have several now, which is exciting. If you go to explorer.telos.net, you can see, there's more than 100 apps that are using Telos for different things, and of those, there's a good, couple dozen that are really exciting things, that are doing things like selling music rights on the network, and just innovative uses like that. Block, AI data set, building and as a gig economy. I mean, things like that you never really would have guessed. So people are the users are finding a lot of uses for these tools, which is kind of how we approached it.
Love that. And on paper, Telos extends its blockchain and all those governance features to all decentralized apps on its platform. And the ultimate aim, of course, is delivering the best user experience in the marketplace. But do you have any use cases that you're able to share that would just help bring all that to life and help people listening understand how it would work in their world?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me suggest that the most obvious one, if people think about it right now, especially as there's an election in the United States, people don't realize that voting is actually one of the very few technologies, or endeavors that's never really had a disruption, right? All these other things have been disrupted. Voting, however, we're still doing as we did, probably as they did in Greek city-states, basically. We added paper instead of clay tablets, but basically we are, checking a box on a piece of paper and passing those pieces of paper around for somebody to count. That's literally how the U.S. government, presidential election is going to happen. Yeah. Right. And that's greatly in need of disruption because people have to make decisions about things all the time. If you in the United States, if you own a home in a neighborhood or if an apartment in a building or flat in a building, there's usually a homeowners or leaseholders association for those things that make, that collect money and, for common usage projects and also vote on how those things are done. And it's constantly a hassle. People don't participate. It's hard. You have to go somewhere. You have to give someone your proxy. And again, it all comes down to pieces of paper or people raising their hands, right? So this transparency, and this happens with people's sports leagues and virtual companies and all kinds of things. There's and real companies, right? There's all kinds of things in our lives where groups of people need to make decisions together, which is essentially what voting and governance is. And the tools have never advanced. Well, Telos Decide is an engine for that allows new governance, committee creation, and management tools, all the things that we think about when we think about how governance happens, to be built on a blockchain that is going to be controlled by smart contracts and apps on people's phones. So all these things that are hard and not trustworthy, they're all going to be revolutionized, and it's already started with Telos Decide governance. That's one small area, and I think that's the most unique area, and the one that people can instantly go, yeah, I guess we really do just put X's on pieces of papers, and why hasn't that been disrupted yet? Well, that's one big chunk of what Telos is already starting to disrupt, and I'm very excited about that. I think people are extremely keenly aware of the problems with our current voting systems, and so that alone would be something that Telos addresses that just is not been addressed well anywhere else. I think there's several other advantages, but that's one that I hope people can understand innately is very powerful and needed.
Another thing that I really love and what makes you guys stand out from a lot of other solutions out there is it's not just all about you and Telos, because you also support the blockchain ecosystem by serving as an incubator and accelerator for other decentralized applications. Can you expand on that for people that are not aware of that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is actually an extension of the governance platform that we build. Once you build a way for people to make these group decisions, and our blockchain itself was sort of the first consumer of that. And we actually built these things for ourselves, and then we extended it out to other dApps because it was so useful. We have a program called Telos Works that allocates some funds each month to grants, and sort of worker proposals to whoever proposes them. And a lot of those have been new apps that are coming out on Telos. And these are voted by the Telos users based on their staked Telos tokens, right? That allows you to participate not only in a share of the usage of the network resources, right, but also allows you to make governance decisions. And one of the big ones that's been very effective for us is, who do we fund? What apps that are looking for that very, very, needed startup funding? Who do we give money to, right? And that's an actual area of funding for startups. It's extremely hard to be able to get to where you can build like an MVP or even a proof of concept that then you can take to more traditional funders. And we've been very successful, though. And on the first project to use Telos Works, something called WordProof, which is a platform that timestamps and proves the the content on the Telos and other blockchains. And that, maybe a little over a year ago, we gave them their first funding, and then once they started and it became a very successful app, it won €1 million, I believe, in the last couple of months from another program, and it's gone on to get more and more funding and build into a really useful app and service. And that started solely from funding from Telos Works. And there's a number of other examples of that. We've got a weather balloon project that's in Western Africa that's using Telos blockchain plus 3D printing plus micro devices, plus low raw internet radio, plus a few other things to do what's never been done before, which is start recording regular data, weather data from Western Africa, where there's a big data hole and where there's essentially no weather prediction service for a country of millions upon millions of people. So the NOAA, the U.S. Government agency, tried to do that 15 years ago and failed, and they're now succeeding because they're incentivizing it on Telos. That started from a Telos Works proposal. I could go on and on about these projects, but that's like such an important area of funding that really a lot of great ideas never get off the launch pad at all. And we realized that if we can, since we have access to so many great ideas, and since so many of these projects are naturally attracted to Telos because of very low operating costs, and the ability to buy in and deploy apps where they couldn't do the same maybe on Ethereum or EOS because the costs are just so high, that we had a great group of projects that needed funding, and if we could find it, we could grow the network even faster. And so far, it's been very successful.
And something else that stands out is you guys have a wide spectrum of uses. So it makes the question I'm about to ask much, much bigger than many people listening will realize. But who's building on Telos?
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of people building different types of projects. Let me talk about a few that I think are really exciting. So One is a company called Cubicles. It's a company that's been in the call center software management business for about 15 years, I think. And it has a great ongoing business, but and it's under a different name, but they some time ago realized that blockchain was the future. And they have built now and have just launching in the next few days, actually, on Telos, a system where businesses that need call center services, instead of just contracting those out directly to large call centers, they can go direct to providers, right? Because that's something that people can do in their homes. Individuals can get themselves jobs doing, in a gig economy, but a high-end gig economy, where they are going through scripts and whatnot on that are provided through the Cubicle system, and they've also gone through training, right? There's NFT badges that certify that each, who's gone through what levels of training, so that they can engage in the system, and so that when employers are looking for people, they can say, okay, well, anyone who's got these three certifications is available, and they can match make in the system. That's what Cubicles does, and they can be paid in the Cubicles QBE token, and build this massive multi-million-dollar real existing business gig economy. Right? That's exciting to me, because that's a sort of a boring, in the best possible way, existing business, right? I don't actually think it's boring, of course, but it's when you think about call centers, that's not the sort of the pie in the sky type of thing that a lot of people talk about when they talk about blockchain businesses. But it's an operating business that generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so they are on Telos, and they were originally going to be on Ethereum, and Ethereum could just never quite cut what they needed, because, going back to those Blocktivity.info numbers, you can see that Ethereum's record most transactions it's ever done in 24 hours is about 1.4 million. And, Telos, we've done, 35 million in 24 hours, right? It's a massive difference. And we know that we could do the same as EOS is doing as we grow, which is 115 million per 24 hours. So these are orders of magnitude larger than what existing, second generation blockchains are able to do. And so it gives businesses like Cubicles confidence. So that's one user. Another exciting thing that I really like is this regenerative economy company. This is a little bit more of your typical blockchain pie in the sky company, but it's basically thinking about the future. They see, and that's called Seeds, and their URL is joinseeds.com, and Seeds is using our governance. Is one of the first users of our governance process. And they've built a really robust system. And essentially what they're doing is they are looking to create and foster and monitor and grow regenerative economy systems. So they have funds, and they allow their users to vote on different proposals. So they know which proposals are going to be, giving the best return on their regenerative economy, basically undoing a lot of the damage that humans have done to the earth over the last, especially 200 years, and making it more livable, because that's something we absolutely must do. So they're letting their users use our governance features to vote on which platforms to use, very much in the same way as the Telos Works proposals work, except specifically within their ecosystem. And then they also, make determinations and vote on when things have met their goals and have actually delivered. And so doing this, they're creating both a marketplace and also a way of vetting and tracking projects that are, seeking their goals, which is making the world a better place and more, undoing economic and ecological damage. So that's really exciting. And then there's a lot of other apps that are using it. There's IoT apps that are looking at that are tracking the temperature and humidity of a large number of data center racks and things like that, and then assigning penalties if they go outside of this approved spec. Right, that's an app that actually my company itself initially built, and it's looking at being rolled out for various users, and it would be really useful in data centers across the world. So there's a wide variety of these apps, because it's a high performance sort of general purpose blockchain with these special features around governance and some other things that hadn't been built by anyone else. And so we're attracting a lot of these projects. There's a project that's planting trees, and then as those trees grow, the owners of those trees who paid to plant the trees receive the carbon credits that they, for the CO2 that the trees then suck out of the air. There's just such a great number of and variety of projects. It's hard to sort of encapsulate everything. If people, like I said, if people go to explore.telos.net, they can see some of these projects. And there's also links to our news site that tracks a lot of these announcements. There's a lot of gaming as well. There's some fantastic gaming platforms that revolutionize what blockchain gaming usually is, because, for example, there's one called Kudo. It's global platform, but it's out of Portugal. And what they're doing is they've given a way for any game that's built in Unity, which is the leading game development engine around for mobile, to incorporate blockchain token incentives into their games without having to do a sort of a ground up token of their own. And it's very exciting. These are fun games. Most blockchain games to date have been very sort of slow, and these have all the sort of the twitch factor of great casual and social games that still have blockchain, anywhere you can still basically earn by playing well, right? So one of the problems with gaming, as a guy who has been in gaming, the biggest problems with computer gaming is many games are sort of pay to win, where the more you pay, the the greater likelihood of winning, right? Because you're buying all the power ups and things like that. And ultimately, users don't like those. So with things like Qdo and these other gaming engines that are launching on Telos, they've really created like get paid to play, where instead of with pay to play, you're the more you pay, the more you win. With paid to play, the more you win, the more you earn. And it just turns that model on its head, and in a way that's much better for users. So it's just a very wide variety of projects on Telos, and each one of them I think is amazing and exciting.
And there's some topics that you should never talk about, especially on the internet or on a podcast, whether it be politics, religion, masks, iOS versus Apple. The list goes on and on. But as a games designer and someone passionate about games, are you a PS5, Xbox, or PC Master Race kind of guy? Dare you reveal that in the public domain?
I don't know. Look, I've never been a person who says this is the end all be all. When you look at blockchains and people who are out there looking and saying this is the one chain to rule them all, I never believe that. I always think that there's I look at the world and I see there are a variety of options, and some things are better for other things. If I'm playing a family game, I'm probably gonna, and which I love, by the way, I'm probably gonna want to play a Nintendo game. Right. Yeah. Because all different ages can play competitively together. It's fun for different people. So for those types of games, I like Nintendo. For the amazing things coming out on the VR things coming out on the PS5 are incredible. I mean, you're literally in the Mario world, essentially, jumping on pipes and it's and you actually see yourself right in some of these games, and those are super exciting. For a lot of games, PvP games, you want to be, if you're not on a PC type system, you're just lagging behind everyone else. So I think it's like horses for courses.
Yeah. Beautifully handled there. I don't think you'll get into any trouble on Reddit with that answer. I think you covered all the bases.
Yeah, there's no avoiding getting into trouble on Reddit.
And here in 2020, of course, it has been a horrendous year for so many reasons. But
has it?
Well, some might say, but
I mean, heard.
But there is an argument that from a digital transformation point of view, it's kind of speeded up adoption of almost everything. And I'm certainly my spidey senses are starting to pick up that businesses, banks, etc., are starting to be much more open to things like blockchain and cryptocurrencies, or digital currencies as they prefer to call them. But what excites you about the future, and what kind of role Telos will play in that economy of the future too?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that the adoption cycle for things like blockchain-based voting, which just happens to be one of our biggest strengths at Telos, are massive, because you no longer can, we go back to my example from previously about the homeowners association, right? And where in the United States, they try to get everybody to come down to the senior center or the high school gym or something on a Tuesday night at 8:30. And gosh, if you can't make it, please give somebody your proxy, because we can never reach our quorum to be able to decide anything, right? That's a very common problem, and no one would go. Well, they're certainly not going to go now that there's a pandemic, right? And so the events, the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the economic events associated with it are, and then of course the political events. Those things are all driving towards this need that, fortunately, we're very fortunate that we sort of foresaw. Sometimes you just get lucky, but I think several of us saw that these were important needs, that people needed better ways to vote. Well, the pandemic has just accelerated that. So I feel like there's, in the next year, we're going to get 3 to 5 years worth of adoption over what we would have had without such an extreme event. Because it just changes what people can do. And the same thing with any of our gig economies. Cubicles, the call center gig economy is not the only one on Telos. For example, there's an AI data set building gig economy that's also just launched or is launching this week, called Unbiased, based in Sweden. And what they're doing is they're building these data sets, right? So AI is going to drive everything, of course, one day, already getting close. And so but these AIs and machine learning algorithms need to have sets of data to train on. And so this is a big business. Like, no one would have guessed 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago, that building data sets for AIs to learn from was going to be a major thing, right? Every country, you're going to have people go in and take pictures of the road signs in every single country, just for the self-driving cars. And then you're going to have to, once you have these things, you're going to have people, or at some point, AIs, but something's got to go through and say, oh, this is a stop sign, and this is a yield sign, and this is this, and this thing that was classified as a stop sign actually isn't a stop sign. You have to, and then also go through and look for gender biases in these things, less in stop signs, but more in other data sets. So Unbiased goes in and has built a tokenized economy on Telos for people to go in and create these data sets, as a group for clients. They already have clients that take these pictures, classify them, put up the metadata, and therefore, build AI training data sets of high value. And that value is shared back to the people who created it. That's a whole new kind of business, right? We couldn't have imagined it a while ago. It's the thing you can only do on a blockchain. And you can only do it on a high capacity blockchain like Telos. So that I'm excited about these things, these ways, there's another gig economy program is called Telos Task that's just about to launch. That's going to be basically like a Fiverr for blockchain, right? Where people can do, micro tasks or macro tasks. So these new economies are definitely driven by, the events of the world right now. This is a year in which we've already entered a year in which many national economies are doing essentially, UBIs, right? Universal basic incomes of a sort. It's not, they don't recognize it as that. They call it stimulus, but essentially it's the same idea. And these are projects that would be best done on blockchain, and they're already being built on Telos. There's a couple of UBI projects that are, still growing and experimental, but they need a lot of the tools that we built, because as you build a UBI, you need people to make decisions about it, and so our governance tools are helpful. You need massive amounts of people to be able to take part, and so our high capacity is essential. And so, I think we're really well positioned for these changes in the future. Social media, there's a number of sort of new model social media platforms that are coming on Telos, where people are being, incentivized for their content. Things like Appix, which came to Telos from Steam, and we were able to help greatly expand their functionality by being on a higher performance blockchain. New Life is combines AI and sort of an Instagram type situation, and also brings in a universal creator income to that, which is a UBI that people vote on for artists, and creators who are, have lost so much of their income, right, lately. So I think that all of these things really push towards a kind of a new approach to how we organize, that disintermediates a lot of the big companies that have been in the middle. And it's essentially these marketplaces are, like an Uber without the Uber taking all the money from the system, right? And I think that's very exciting. I think people need that because they need to be making money, whether that's in a gig economy or for some people through a UBI type system, or just through chaining together a lot of different types of systems that where normally a Facebook or somebody or Twitter would extract the value. That value is more equitably shared amongst all the participants who actually create the value on a blockchain-based system like Apex or New Life. So I think that the next year is going to see a lot more of this, and I think a lot more people are going to find that some meaningful portion of their economic livelihood is becoming dependent on blockchain, because these are the best opportunities, right? This is the new wave of business where instead of the Facebooks and Googles and everybody getting all that value, which, Google is now being sued by the U.S. Department of by the U.S. government under antitrust laws because of exactly these things. Well, one of the reasons that you have the monopolies is there are not yet alternatives, and I think that the alternatives are actually coming where there is no Google. There's an economy that allows people to work together and earn together and share in the revenue instead of that revenue being extracted. And that's what these are a lot of the themes I think we'll see in blockchain technology, especially where Telos is concerned over the next year.
It certainly seems like there's an incredibly exciting future ahead, and I'd love to stay in touch with you and see where this all leads. But we've covered a lot of ground today, so for anyone listening that wants to dive deeper, find out more information, join your community or contact your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Well, the best way probably is to get onto telos.net and look around at our various materials there. Like I said, you can go to Explorer. You can actually create a free account and start using some of these features if you go to app.telos.net. If you're a developer, you can go to docs.telos.net and start reading about our documentation and how you can easily use these features in your own apps. If you are someone who's on Twitter or Telegram, for either one of those, the handle is @HelloTelos, HelloTelos. And you can follow us and find a lot of there are many languages that have their own Telos groups, and many sub apps have their own groups. So those are great places to go. People can follow me if they want on Twitter at Douglas_Horn I can lead them to other things like projects I'm involved in, like Epios, which is our private testing, for anonymous testing for COVID-19 and other epidemics on the blockchain, which is there's just one of the many uses that are emerging every day, really. But Telos.net is really the best central location, and you can find all these others from there.
And do you have a quiet naughty corner for the When Moon guys? Do they still exist? Have they all disappeared now?
They do. When Lambo has become When Camry over the last few years, but look, people who are excited about the future and want to get on it now, they definitely can find us, and they can find places to buy it in those areas. Myself, I've always been focused mainly on the value of Telos as a system, and not as much of the price of the TLOS token. But that's just my own focus, and there are a lot of people who see Telos as an amazing investment opportunity, because there's a big difference between our price right now and the price of comparable systems. So I think those guys absolutely have their place, and I think there's a lot of speculators and investors who would do very well to look at it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And the advanced voting features, smart contracts that can be fully configured to meet the needs of any developer, that is all the cool stuff right there. And I'd love to see and hear more about what those developers are going to be creating over the next few years. But more than anything, just thank you so much for taking the time to share that story with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. These have been great questions, and I just love talking about it. I would love to come back someday and give you an update.
What I love most about the conversation today is Douglas's personal story of what got him into tech and how Telos supports the blockchain ecosystem by serving as an incubator and accelerator for decentralized applications, which for me goes a long way to solving this adoption problem that we all hear so much about. And it is starting to feel that things are starting to get exciting again in the world of crypto and blockchain. And by that, I don't mean investments, but the solutions that are being built. That is the real cool stuff. But as always, keep your messages coming over to me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You can get me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Just find me at Neil C. Hughes. So keep your messages, thoughts, questions coming over, and I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.